Hello guys and welcome once again to the BartenderHQ.com podcast. I'm David Eden-Sangwell and I'm your host as always. On this week's show we're talking about the different roles that people play in nightclubs, in restaurants and the kind of jobs that are available out there for bartenders and for anyone in this industry really. So let's get on with the show.
Welcome to the BartenderHQ.com podcast. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at BartenderHQ. Here's your host, David Eden-Sangwell.
So, as you're probably aware, I have spent the last 15 or so years working in different bars, different restaurants, nightclubs, and pretty much every aspect of the hospitality industry, including right through to hotels and that sort of thing. So I wanted to kind of touch on this week a few of the different roles that are available in the business and where you could kind of start, where you can get into the business, where you might want to end up, and the kind of roles that bartenders can achieve. So let's start off with talking about a regular restaurant. So I'm going to use TGI Fridays as an example. Now, this is the restaurant group that I worked with for the longest. I was with them for around about 8 years. And they are fairly typical, I would guess, in terms of like casual dining kind of restaurants and bars. So we'll use them as our example for today, at least to get started with, and then we'll kind of branch out into some of the other crazy stuff that goes on. But to start with TGI Fridays, you've got a whole bunch of different job roles. If you think about the way that the restaurant runs, you've not just got bartenders, you've not just got waiters, you've got a whole plethora of people that make the whole place work. So let's have a little look at where people come into the business and where people end up. So the kind of entry-level jobs that we have within a TGI Fridays, front of house at least, would be a busser and a barback. Now, the bussers are there to support the waiters, and their role is essentially clearing tables, running food as and when it's necessary, although the waiters kind of have the main responsibility for that. You may well have a busser that's assigned to be a food runner for the night, and their job is purely to come backwards and forwards from the kitchen running food out to the tables. But the main job for the busser, and the name, where the name comes from for the busser, is that they bus tables. So they basically run out there with their little kit of wipes, basically blue roll or cloths, and they have all the napkins with them, the cutlery, the sanitizer sprays, all that sort of thing. And they'll basically be the ones that take a table that's just been left, which will probably have sticky marks on it, bits of sauce that's been spilled, bits of salt on there, all that sort of stuff. They give it a good clean down so that it's nice and clean and ready for the next guests. They relay it with the napkins, with the cutlery, with whatever sauces and condiments are supposed to be on that table, and they basically prepare that table for its next set of guests. Now, they've got a very important job, and they'll work quite closely with the door hosts, which we'll come to next, to basically be able to turn the tables as quickly as possible in the restaurant. Now, I'm not going to dwell too long on the front of house outside the bar, because obviously this is a bartending podcast, but it's important to know that this is a potential way to get into one of these businesses and then move on from being a busser. Quite often the bussers will move up to being a barback or up to being a waiter, so that's the kind of two forks that a busser can normally take. Now, the waiters at TGI Fridays are known as dub-dubs, which is short for the WW, waiter, waitress. Just a little bit of Fridays trivia there for you. And the idea is that these waiters, these dub-dubs, are the ones that take care of the guests who are in the restaurant area. So the bartenders will take care of the guests while they're in the bar. The waiters will take care of them while they're at the tables. That all makes sense. Now, the waiters do have a certification standard. Every position in Fridays, at least in the old days, used to have a certification level. I'm not sure if the bussers do anymore. I've certainly heard recently that the Barbacks no longer have a certification, but certainly for bartenders, waiters, and the kitchen guys, they will all have a certification level. So that basically covers all of the basics that you need to know to do your job and to be up to a certain standard of service for your guests. Now, the waiters will take everything from once the guests sit down initially, they'll go over, greet them, offer the menus. If the door hosts haven't already passed those out, they'll take the initial drinks order. They'll run that drinks order back. They will take the food orders. Then they'll be kind of backwards and forwards to those guests throughout their experience and offering the extra drinks and all that sort of thing. So these waiters need to know the drinks menu just as well as the bartenders, or at least to the point of knowing what everything tastes like so that they can recommend different drinks to their guests. Now, the bartenders obviously need to know how to make the drinks. The waiters don't necessarily need that information, but they do need to know the basic ingredients that are in there and kind of the different flavours that stuff has. So, moving on from the waiters, you've got your barbacks. And you will get some waiters that go up to being barbacks, some bussers that go straight on to barbacking. And the barbacks are the ones who look after your bartenders. So they will be, on the busy shifts at least, they will be behind the bar. They will be restocking beers, they'll be restocking fruit juices, cutting fruit if anything's running low. They'll be refilling ice wells, they'll be cleaning glasses, cleaning shakers, cleaning basically anything that needs cleaning throughout the shift. They'll help the bartenders with the breakdown at the end of the shift, and also the barbacks are quite often bartenders in training. So your barbacks will be learning how to make up all the mixes that are needed for the bartenders. So things like if you make a pina colada mix in-house, which Fridays used to, don't know if they still do, but that's the way that it used to be. They would make up the pina colada mixes, the sweet and sours, the lime mixes, all that sort of thing that was made kind of in-house. Frozen strawberries, for strawberry purees, and they'd obviously also need to know all of the colour codes that are used within the juice bottles. The juices all have like tape colour codes. We talked about the insulating tape that I use to identify my flare gear a couple of weeks ago, and this same tape is used for identifying the different store and pours. So like yellow tape on a store and pour would mean it's orange juice, red and black would be cranberry, blue was pineapple, blue and white was pina colada, black was apple juice. It just goes on, and there's I think there was about 13 or 15 different colour codes for stuff, plus little lime juices and things like that as well. So the barback needs to know all of that, because otherwise you're going to end up with the wrong juices in the wrong store and pours. That's going to ruin drinks and all that kind of thing. So moving up from the barbacks, you've then got your bartenders. Your bartenders, obviously, especially at Fridays, needed to know 120-ish drinks from memory for the certification level, and the bartender's job is to take care of all the guests around the bar area for the duration of their stay. Now, that will also include serving food to anyone that wants to eat at the bar or at the bar tables. It also includes recommending drinks. You obviously need to have memorised your drinks as part of the certification for the bartenders and all that sort of thing as well. So it's quite a tricky job, and it does take a lot of practice, a lot of commitment to get everything down and memorised for the bartenders. But that is kind of why the bartenders at Fridays have a bit of a fame thing. You'll go between different Fridays and people will know bartenders from other stores. It doesn't work quite the same way for the waiters. There was at one point a dub challenge that that Fridays was running. I don't think it carried on for very long. But yeah, the bartenders have always had kind of the fame thing. They've always had, since the days of Cocktail, when it was Friday's bartenders that trained Tom Cruise and Brian Brown for the Cocktail movie. Friday's bartenders have always had a bit of a reputation for the flaring and that sort of thing. So, other job roles that you'll have front of house, you've got obviously your management team, but you've also got door hosts. And your host team are responsible for managing the wait times at the door, managing any bookings and making sure that the tables are ready for those and they're allocated and then they're not waiting longer than they should be for their tables. And they would also coordinate with the busser team, so the bussers would be clearing and resetting the tables and letting the door hosts know so that they can seat people on those tables as quickly as possible. Now, The door hosts will also have quite a big effect on the bar. So if there's a long wait on tables, then the door hosts will be sending more guests to the bar, so the bartenders get more busy, which is why we separate out, like we were talking about last week, the service bar is on a separate bar, so that when the restaurant's busy and the bar's busy, the restaurant doesn't suffer and doesn't have to wait longer for the drinks. You've got one bartender that is specifically purely making drinks for the restaurant, and that is your service bartender in the dispense bar or the service bar. Now, as I say, the other people that you've got working front of house are your management team. So you could have supervisors, you could have like team leaders who are kind of management and training or low-level managers. You'll have department heads who, on a day-to-day basis, they'll take care of a specific department. So you'd have one bartender manager who will do all the rotering for the bartenders and the barbacks. You'd have another manager who generally does all of the rotering for the waiters and the bussers. You might have another one that does, say, the hosts and the bussers, and the waiters have a separate one. Sometimes it works a little bit differently like that, and a general manager. And then you'll also have, back of house, you'll have your line cooks who will be certified on different stations in the kitchen, so you're not certified immediately on the whole kitchen. You'd learn fry, which is obviously your fryers. You'd learn the grill, which is the main broiler, which is all your burgers and your steaks and that sort of thing. You'd also have window chefs, who is generally the kitchen manager would run the window. They're the one that's assembling all of the meals, making sure that everything's timed properly, coming out as it should do. And in the old days, we used to have an expediter as well, although that's kind of been moved over now to the waiter side, and it's quite often a manager that will work the expo. Basically, quality checking all of the meals as they come out from the kitchen. Obviously, you've also got kitchen porters as such, which are like your dish guys and anyone that's helping to stock stuff back of house. So that hopefully gives you a bit of an overview of the different roles that you would have in a typical restaurant. Now, if you're working in hotels, you might find that there are slightly different roles or slightly different names for the roles. Like, for example, I found that certainly when I was working out in Dubai, head bartender wasn't a role as such. You'd have bar supervisors, and then you'd have what was called a bar captain, and the bar captains were kind of like under supervisors, but they'd be the ones that kind of coordinated the day-to-day on the bar. And the same with waiters. They'd have like waiter captains and regular waiters. I don't know if that's just the different terminology that they were using over there, or if that's kind of a standard outside of Europe, or quite how it works. Maybe it's even a French thing, because I know a lot of the management team that we had at the One and Only Resort were French. But I've heard this bar captain thing a little bit before. I think it may be like more of an Asian kind of thing. But if you guys know exactly what that's all about and what the role is, then do get in touch. Maybe I'll ask my friend Guru, who was at the One and Only with me. He's now the head bartender, I believe, at the High Ultra Lounge in Bangalore. Of course, the other difference with the hotels is that you'll have an in-house housekeeping team who work within the hotel, and they deal with the majority of the clean-up outside of the bar. The bartenders will still break down the bar and that sort of thing, but you'll have a housekeeping team that will generally come and do the floors outside of the bar, take care of any sort of patio areas, outside spaces, and that sort of thing. So that's a little bit different in the hotels. It doesn't generally happen that you have a separate cleaning crew in bars. Otherwise, although some bars will have an outside contractor that comes in, again, to clean the communal areas and that sort of thing. But again, the bartenders are the ones that are responsible for keeping the bar itself clean and tidy and hygienic. Now, of course, if you're working in nightclubs and that sort of thing, there are quite often VIP bars, and quite often you'll have either the more senior bartenders will work those purely because it's kind of a rank thing, and your VIP bars are generally going to generate more tips than the regular bars for the majority of customers, where it's high volume but possibly lower quality drinks. So it's one of these things that you can work your way up to this, but the more experience that anyone can get behind the bar, the better, because it's always going to be a seniority thing, and the more you've worked and the more you know, the better your prospects are going to be. So keep working, keep memorising those drinks, and you'll do well. So I think we'll wrap it up there for this week's BartenderHQ.com podcast. As usual, you can find us on all the social networks. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/BartenderHQ. We're on Twitter at BartenderHQ. We're on the Worldwide Bartender Community, which is on Facebook. Search for it and you'll find it. Instagram at BartenderHQPics. You can find the YouTube channel, and obviously please find us on iTunes and give us that 5-star review. It really helps us out and helps people find the podcast. And while you're at it, please share this podcast with your friends. Share the YouTube video with your friends if you found us on the YouTube channel. And the more people that we can get to know about this, the cooler stuff we can do, basically. So, I've been Eden-Sangwell for the BartenderHQ.com podcast for this week, and I will see you again next time.
Thanks for listening to the BartenderHQ.com podcast. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at BartenderHQ.